Welcome back to Gene and Roger Talk Movies. We're talking Disappear Completely today. It's a Spanish language film, but we have director friend Scott Eggleston is back with us. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
I think, Scott, you were the one that said, hey, guys, watch this Disappear Completely movie, and we're going to talk about it.
So it's your idea.
Yeah, so we'll find out if we're blaming him. Gene, where are you at with this one?
Okay, thanks for always the lead in there. This movie it's good. I was watching it with my 14-year-old until we got to the intimate scene. He was out of there, but we watched it pretty late. He was tired, but he gave it a good shot. But just 14. Yeah, and he was commenting that this movie is really dark. There are like no scenes of brightness or light in this movie, and there hardly is any. And that's on purpose because this movie's really dark. It's all about the occult and witchcraft and a little bit of like a zombie-ish, But I don't know. Do I like the movie? I don't know. Is that really important? Who cares what I think ultimately? It's it's really what you matter is the viewer, I guess. But what I recommend to watch it. It makes you think about stuff. It's a different way of thinking about life. It's the spiritual world, the occult, and I don't know. It makes you think because like if there's a good side, you go to church and Jesus and the baby Jesus, and they're all good, but wouldn't there be an opposite, the yin and the yang, kind of thing? And some people worship those guys. And so, but this movie has a lot of elements to it. Like I was watching it, I thought of like the Autopsy of Jane Doe. It made me think of the movie The Witch because Black Phillip shows up, or what I thought was Black Phillip.
The goat.
The goat, yeah.
There's one scene with the goat.
Yeah, I saw the goat and I just like, oh, wait, there's Black Phillip. I guess all goats are black, but yeah, it's okay. I guess I don't know. Is it scary? Does a horror movie have to be scary? I don't know if that's a prerequisite.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess I'm a little
on the fence.
A little tepid. I guess.
Yeah, let's get the insight from Master Director Scott Eggleston. Wow. Where are you at with this one, Scott?
Yes.
No, I thought this was a solid movie, a solid horror movie. Is it a great movie? No. But I think it does enough things that are different and interesting. I read the reason I recommended it was I read the premise. That was an interesting premise. The first thing I thought of was The Incredible Melting Man, right? It was like the first place I went in my head.
Which is a much better film than this.
It was more gory for sure. But I thought this one...
watch that movie.
No, you don't.
When I was on before, we talked about the Babadook and how I like movies that are about something. And I think this one's a little probably lightweight in the theme department. I mean, all the themes it kind of wears on its sleeve. I don't know how much subtext there is, but... It is a compelling movie for sure. I mean, the story centers around this kind of tabloid photographer who all he seems to photograph is death.
Yeah. That's his thing, is to photograph death, and then he puts some tagline on them.
Yeah,
like terrible. Man turns into cheese, something like that. And then he sells
Cheese Man, because he was eaten by rats.
And then he sells these for a lot of money to the local Spanish country tabloid.
But he does have aspirations to be something better, right?
Yes,
like we know his work is turned down from a museum or a exhibit or something.
Well, of course it is, because they don't want their museum filled with photos of corpses.
Right.
Because
where's their vision?
Yeah, but and Gene, both of you guys kind of hit it with this movie with the photography of the dead. This guy is obsessed with that. He's got an in with the police. They let him know when something's happened. He rushes over there. He takes the photo. He instructs people, oh, hey, I need more lighting right here on this corpse, because he's trying to make this art form out of dead people, basically. Yeah. And even when he stumbles across the woman where everyone's vomiting because she's so stabbed and decayed.
And she smells.
And
I think that's what gets them.
He's moving her hair out of the way so he can get that perfect shot.
There was a dead woman who was pregnant, and so he lifts her blouse up to expose her stabbed belly.
And so that part, to me, that was the interesting part of this film, where he was then also mocking the dead, like that tabloid thing, like we just said. There's this guy who had died, or turns out he wasn't actually dead, but these rats had been eating his face, and his little tagline for that photo was "Cheese Man."
Right.
And so he's got this kind of mockery in this. I'm not being respectful of the dead. It's all about creating these photos, and that's what
Well,
ultimately.
even of the girl, I thought. Sorry, but he makes a little story up about her. It's like, oh, she went out for a late night snack and got crushed by the valet. You know,
right? Yeah, and then,
you know, so it's all about. You know, and the news, the tabloid guy, there's a line in there where he says it's all about clicks. You know, and so it's all provocative. It's all meant to be visceral. You know, just so you get clicks. That's all it is.
right, and then there's this kind of side story between him and his wife of 14 years, and they have purposely not tried to have children, but she ends up pregnant, and so you have this guy who's all about death and death photography, and then now here's this pregnant wife, and there's going to be a new life coming, and then the curse shows up, which leads him astray. So I really liked the initial setup with this character, and I kind of wish they had gone down more of that obsession role rather than devolving into garbage.
Oh, wow, Roger.
Well, I guess if I could throw in, I guess what kind of just doesn't work for me, and it doesn't in a general sense, movies where the main character has a lot of horrific dreams, and then he wakes up. Oh, it was
alarm,
just a dream. Yeah, it's false. Thank you very much.
I agree.
Yeah, it's like it leads you down like a false path as a viewer. And then because I have dreams like that, it's like, whoa, is this dream really? But I also have really good dreams too. But you know, so it's like, what?
It's a tropey.
It's just like I don't like it. It's like make the horror real. You know, non in the dream.
Right. I mean, this one, I will give it one minuscule amount of credit for the dream sequence because it was 2 dream sequences. So he wakes up, it was a dream.
We've seen this before, yes.
And then, there's another dream that was, so
which was done better in American Werewolf in London, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, very good.
But he ends up discovering, and I have to point out, there's a dog in this movie. His name is Zombie.
Of course, the dog is the name Zombie.
Zombie. And of course, hey, the dog's cool. The dog's cool. Right. So we already know what's going to happen to the dog, although you're not expecting exactly what's going to happen to the dog. But the dog is trying to get under the stove, and the guy's like, hey, what are you doing under there? And eventually he realizes there's some sort of frog-like creation with stitching on it, and he's been cursed.
Right.
Right. He takes the frog to like a medium or seance person, and they say, open it. And then he touches it with his hands. It's like, come on, get some gloves on at least.
Right.
Well, he'd been touching it, right?
He's been touching it. It's not germophobic at all.
Yeah. And so basically this curse is you begin to lose your senses. And so we alluded to, all these cops are vomiting all over the place around this corpse because of the smell. And he's like, it's not affecting me at all. And so,
he can't.
So his 5 senses start to go away. And then it leads him down this path of, I've got to find this voodoo witch doctor lady who can get me set up. And that's the weird part of the movie to me is when they're going down that road, I don't know, about an hour and 15 minutes into it, the big seance sequence, and you're like, well, is that it? Is the movie over? Where are we going to go from here? And then, oh no, the seance didn't work, and we're still going with this film.
Which he doesn't even ask for a refund.
Right, yeah.
It's just like, thanks for nothing.
Yeah, and I do want to point out, too, it's a Spanish language film, so it's subtitled, which I'm sure there's a dubbed version out there somewhere, but definitely appreciate subtitled films.
Just read the subtitles.
Yeah, because you do get the emotion and the vocal inflection.
Although I do think the subtitles hurt the movie a little bit toward the end when he's going deaf, because the sound design really takes a lot of brave choices in this movie. In that last act.
I'm going to say stupid choices that I hate.
Okay.
No, I agree. I'm with Scott on this one. This is the first movie I think I've ever been to or saw, whatever verbiage. But, because the main character, his senses start to degrade, and then towards the end, he starts losing his hearing. But then the soundtrack of the movie gets dubbed or muffled, and it's hard to hear actually as the viewer. So you're kind of like, am I under the curse? What's
Well,
going
clearly
on?
it's a point of view type thing, but
Right. So I like that, actually.
but with the subtitles there, you really don't lose any of those senses. That's what I'm saying. It's like,
Right.
yeah, it would have been interesting had I known Spanish, or if it was in English, how would you respond to that type of tweaking of the sound design and everything. But with the subtitles there, you really have no struggle at all until the very end, when it goes completely silent.
Right, and I'm all about gimmicks, right? I love 3D, I love Emergo and Aroma-Rama and all that stuff. I love that stuff. This is just annoying as hell.
Really?
Because you can't replicate the fact that I can't smell, right? So
No.
you're showing that on screen. And then suddenly they just decide, hey, we're going to just make the soundtrack virtually inaudible. There's buzzing noises and stuff like that. And I'm just like, what is the deal here? And then in the end, there's this dialogue conversation between him and his wife, which is completely silent. And it's like, what is the end of this movie? What is happening at the end there? I have no idea. Scott, director, master director. What? Because the movie just stops.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scott, I was hoping you could really.
Well, obviously,
enlighten us.
I can't lip read either, not in Spanish, right? I guess I could call a Spanish friend and say, what are they saying? But to me, okay, just for everybody who's listening, he finds the warlock, right, or whatever that guy was who initiated the curse, and he begs to have it lifted, and the guy says essentially, which I thought was interesting, he could hear him in his head, right, clear as day,
Right.
that he wanted his spawn or he wanted the baby.
Yes.
So he gives him some kind of potion, which we don't know what it does, but I guess it will drug the wife, and then the warlock can come get it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So he stumbles back to his house and then puts the potion or whatever in the coffee, some tea or something.
Yeah.
And they have an exchange, which we don't know what it is. I'm
Right.
assuming it has something to do with the baby. Like, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to abort it. I don't know. We don't know. But he slaps the cup out of her hand before she can drink it, which is I saw that as sort of his last act of redemption. Like, he couldn't go through with it, right? Initially he's saying, no, I can't do it. And the warlock says, well, you have to if you want to be saved or whatever. And so you think he's going to do it, but then he doesn't at the end, and then he dies, I guess. At the very end, he just dies. It just ends.
Right.
Which I wasn't as offended by the end of the movie.
It annoys me. No.
You guys were.
Because
No,
I watched
I'm not offended either. I was. It fits with the movie, I thought.
I watched it twice. And the first time, of course, immediately I'm like, because I've got my headphones on, because the wife doesn't like horror movie sounds. And I'm like, I've got 27 different cords plugging into various things there. And I'm like, oh, has something happened here with my stuff? And so I'm messing around. And then I realize, oh, no, wait, the director's just being cute right now. And so then when I watched it the second time just last night, I'm like, oh, here it comes. And it actually causes me to check out of the film, right? So all of that stuff Scott just explained, I'm like, I was so checked out there where it was like, is this the rest of the movie where it's just this nightmare buzzing noise all the time anytime anyone speaks, and then it stops completely, and I was just like, okay, please end, please end, please end. And then luckily it did, but I hate that. Give me 3D.
Well, I mean, in defense of the end of the movie, like, some people, have criticized my film for doing the same thing, where it just sort of appears to end, which does catch you off guard. And I can think of there's several movies like that where you're like, oh, what, this is it? But then as you maybe re-examine the ending, maybe once you know it's going to end like that, I think it's easier to analyze and understand and accept, but it doesn't work for everybody.
But the ending
clearly.
of your movie, Bad Bones, was fit perfectly.
Okay, well, thank
right?
you.
I mean, she's driving away. She had escaped the curse, and the other lady was like, "How did this happen?" Perfectly
And then she
setting up
drops the book
perfectly
and-
setting up
yeah.
the sequel,
Right.
which we're waiting for patiently.
Yeah,
but
what is up with that scene? Because
Unwritten.
then the neighbor would be the star, right? It'd be her redemption.
Or you follow Jen wherever she goes.
Well, no, you've got to focus it around the Danielle Rabinovich character, because the whole point is you discover that she's actually in control of the whole thing, and every house in that neighborhood is part of her master plan, and she's feeding off of all of those
Yeah,
houses.
she's gaining strength
Right.
from the
Yeah,
weaknesses
yeah.
of
Well, I
the
hadn't thought of that. No.
But anyway, see, this is my
Yes.
problem with this movie. I'm going to talk about some other movies rather than this one. But I do want to go back to, I do love the way he is looking at death and then basically having to experience the dying process. I wish they would have tapped into that more and just more along those themes, because it almost seems like, okay, we're doing this cool setup, and now we get the voodoo lady involved. And I almost wish it would have been just all of that didn't need to be there. And it was just this, how is he dealing with this unsolvable situation? Because he goes to the doctor, 2 or 3 of them at various points, and they're like, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you at all.
Right.
But there is something wrong with him.
Well, it's
he
a
just
spiritual
yeah.
wrong.
And this movie just annoys me. And I watched it twice.
I think it, for me, it's also at the very beginning of the movie. There's this long introduction. Like, what do you call that when you put words up front?
A prologue or a
there's
crawl,
a prologue. You got
like Star Wars.
You got to read something. Yeah. Star Wars.
Yeah, it's
may the
Star
Force-
Wars crawl.
May the force be with you for sure. But and there's a prologue in it. It talks about that when you take a picture of somebody, it's like death, and cameramen are like the bringers of death, something like that. That's a paraphrase for sure. So I was kind of expecting the whole movie to be about how photography is related to maybe our life force, or like that, or how taking pictures takes away our life force. I don't know. And the movie kind of gets like that, because certainly he is the photographer and is taking pictures of death. But then he is cursed, and he has to come up with all this money for this woman, this seance-y woman. And then he sells all of his cameras, and then all references to photography just end.
Right.
Right. And then what's up with that? We're reaching the climax of the movie, and then the whole premise of the movie is photography, and then it's just gone.
Well, I thought that was just some irony they were working in there. I mean, he was obviously giving up his livelihood and everything that made him who he was to be alive again, or to be cured, which if he was, he would have lost everything anyway. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the old Twilight Zone episode of Burgess Meredith breaking his glasses at the end of the show.
Right.
It's irony. I mean, it's unfair, but it's irony.
But Gene, I think you're right, because I really do love that quote at the beginning, and I actually looked at it more of there are tens of thousands of photos of people that have been completely lost to time, right? You look at some random photo from 1912. Here's a whole bunch of people in there, all of whom are dead. They're just lost to time, many of whom nobody even knows they existed anymore because it's been so long.
Right.
And so that's where I was really liking how they were kind of going down the photography road, and how
Yeah, I wish they had done more of that.
Yeah.
And I saw even at the end, if he had a camera, maybe he takes like a picture of like that warlock dude.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe somehow it kills him. I don't know.
Yeah.
If they just kept it going, but no, they stopped it. Yeah, you get the irony. I don't. It just is like a lot of buildup, and then just stops.
I mean, like I said earlier, I think
it's
it's light thematically. Like you say, they do develop some interesting
yeah.
themes and kind of give them up for more of a genre type of a story. But
light thematically is.
And
yeah,
I
it's good.
think too, though, one of my other problems with this film is the main protagonist is not a very likable fellow, in my opinion, because I'm making my living off of mistreating the dead by taking all of these photos and then making him look as great as possible and making some stupid tagline to it. And he kind of mistreats his wife a little bit, where, hey, we don't want to have this kid, and
it's very
all that.
unlikable.
And so then he's going through this thing, and I didn't really care because he's not a likable person. And I think had they gone down the road of more about the photography aspect without all the voodoo stuff, it might have been a more interesting film for me, because I didn't like the guy.
Yeah. Likable characters are definitely horror movie foundational aspects.
I mean, how could you like a guy that is profiting off of photos of the dead? I don't know.
Well, but he did have greater ambitions. I mean, I don't agree that he was completely unlikable. I think as the movie went on, I became more empathetic for him. Felt sorry, especially after that ritual that he has to perform, or feels that he has to perform, which was probably the hardest thing for me to watch in the movie. Just again, trigger warning if you're a dog lover, watch out for this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of didn't like how he treated his dog, because you can see like the degradation of the dog, and the dog, does he take him for a walk? Does he pet him?
A last walk.
Right, because that's the obsession with his little art.
He just gets mad and throws the dog in the closet.
Well, it bites him. Remember, it bites him.
Yeah, the dog bites him.
Well, but I also think too, because there's a good line of dialogue there where his wife says, maybe you should think of a different career because you've been doing this for 14 years and it's going nowhere.
Right.
And it's really his weird obsession with taking photos of dead people. It's just, I didn't like him. Sorry.
That's the main issue probably with you with this movie, I think, is if you don't if you like the protagonist, you'll follow them anywhere, right? Whatever they do. But if you don't, you don't care. So.
Well, and it's that, but it's also the whole voodoo stuff. That entire stuff could have just been removed and something better put in its place of him just not being able to get the help he needs to figure out what's going wrong with him, and just this continued downward spiral. It could still have ended up with him discovering this weird vision in one of the photos he took and then tracking that thing down. You still could have had that part, but the whole voodoo stuff was just kind of unnecessary.
Yeah, it seemed to, like, when that first voodoo ceremony, it just seemed to get a little silly. That's
I mean,
Like the
horror
weird guy
movies
game.
are littered with that type of stuff.
Yeah, I thought
So
a lot of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was really silly, but Roger still loves that.
Oh,
movie.
that is one of the greatest films of all time, right there for sure.
I don't know, dude. That one chase scene where he's chasing her through those
That's
brambles,
what
it just
makes
goes
it
on
so great.
forever. It's like,
That's
come
what makes.
on.
But that was the intensity of that film, where it's going to do that.
But it's not. It just goes on too long. You're
Oh,
just thinking,
no.
like, dude, it's like you should be able to catch her.
Oh, no, that was beautiful. I love that movie, which is way better than Disappear Completely is or whatever. But I did, because I knew last night, oh, God, I've got to watch this movie again, and I'm not going to like it. But there's another movie on Netflix called Tin and Tina, which is also a Spanish language film. It's 2 hours long. It was like 11 at night, and I said, well, I'm going to just check this out for 10 minutes. I stayed up the whole 2 hours watching
And you
this
watched the
thing.
whole thing, even though it's longer than 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Your runtime.
Gene,
limit?
I want you to take a look at that film.
Is it
and-
horror?
Yes, it
Or is
is.
this some rom-com or something?
No. There is nothing funny going on in this movie, but I was surprised at how good this movie is, and so it redeemed my second watching of Disappear Completely by being able to watch that afterwards. It's amazing.
Huh.
But I'm off track there. Gene, anything more to talk about this movie?
No, I think we're talked out.
Scott.
Yes, I have a couple things to add. Just from a nerdy technical perspective, I wanted to
Yes.
point out about this movie I thought was cool. Was first of all, it's the aspect ratio is 3:2, which is a picture aspect ratio, which I thought was interesting.
I did not notice that.
Yeah, I mean originally I thought it was like 4:3 because it's a square. It's
Yeah.
not typical widescreen. And I looked it up and it was
So
actually
it
3:2.
didn't fill the screen. You're
No,
saying
it didn't.
it didn't. I didn't even notice. I
notice,
guess
yeah.
because I didn't notice, because it was dark.
Well, and there was daytime in this movie. It wasn't completely dark. The whole
Some.
thing.
Yeah, when he
some.
met the guy up on the rooftop.
yeah,
it
the-
was-
Yeah, the
parking
rooftop, or when
garage.
he goes to look up the voodoo lady, or when they go for the ritual, it's initially sunny. But anyway,
Right.
another thing I really liked was the detail of him having to constantly bribe the police to get into the crime scene, which I believe is a very Mexico type
yes,
thing.
that's a real thing. I can attest to that from
Oh,
lived
okay.
experience.
Okay, so
Well, they're not Mexico. It's Spain, isn't it? Spain.
was it? I thought it was Mexico.
No, they were setting it as Mexico.
It's
Okay.
Mexico. Okay.
Okay. And the last thing I noticed, which I thought was cool, was after he tracks down the warlock guy, and from then on to the end of the movie, the aspect ratio narrows, like it starts shrinking until the very end when it's really narrow, like it's half the size
Right.
of when the movie started, because the walls are closing in and his life's about to be over. But stuff like that I always find quite interesting. Just the little subtle things you can do.
Yeah, if they'd given context for that, and if they had stayed with the whole photography element, and maybe teach us a little bit about photography, then we could notice it. I don't see. I appreciate that, but then it's lost because.
Well,
They
it wasn't
don't
lost on me.
Yeah, I didn't.
But on regular Joe like me,
No, I didn't notice it either. And
Roger's horror movie guy.
that's kind of annoying that I didn't notice it, because I do pay attention to.
I mean, it's
aspect
subtle.
ratio.
Like I said, I had to go back because I noticed it toward the end. Like, well, that looks a lot more narrow. And I wondered when it started. And it's when he finds the warlock, and his world then starts
right,
to
'cause
collapse.
one of the senses that he's going to lose
His sight.
is his sight. So maybe that was part of it too.
Yeah,
And it does there's a lot of shallow focus in this movie, which is another thing I noticed about another movie, Civil War, which was also about a photographer.
Yeah,
They do a lot of
which
the same
is great,
things.
by the way.
Yeah, I did enjoy that movie. A lot of bokeh in that movie.
Bokeh
And
was bokeh.
when out of focus things in the background that are circular, and they look like the iris of the camera. They have that weird kind of.
You mean it's just like shallow depth of field like that?
Well, bokeh refers to like if lights are photographed behind you and they're out of focus, they're the same exact shape as the iris of the camera. So if you have like a six-bladed iris in your lens, that's why it looks like an octagon or whatever. That's that kind of stuff.
So I like this movie now all of a sudden. No, I'm just kidding.
But they did a lot of very shallow focus, like things were out of focus in the foreground and in the background, and just in the middle it was focused. The focal plane was way more narrow, especially at the end. There's a lot of softness, and he's barely, the object in the center is only.
I see. There's a great potential there if they had just got more into the photography element and maybe if like. Because how movies, they educate the viewer along the way, so we kind of are in on the story. But I wish if they had done that, this movie would be much more filling, and more fulfilling as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say.
But, it just gets lost because as a layperson, you don't catch it.
Well, I did notice these things.
Yes.
I mean, I think obviously it worked more for me than for you guys, which is fine. But. But as a decent movie, I think it's worth seeing. It's not a great movie, but I think it has its moments and works as a whole.
I think the first 35 to 40 minutes are pretty solid, and after that, it just falls completely apart. It's about an hour and 47 minutes, I think. But I'm not recommending this one at all.
Nicolas Cage has a new horror movie. Or transition. Did you hear about that?
Is it... no, I don't. I have heard about it. I can't remember the title of it, though.
That's not the one you guys just reviewed, right? Because I listened to
Willy's Wonderland.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that
No,
one?
but I want to after hearing your review.
Dude, I thought it was going to be a piece of garbage, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that one's definitely good. But, definitely look at that Tin and Tina movie. If it does not make you feel uncomfortable, I will be shocked. It's right in your wheelhouse as far as horror movies should make me feel uncomfortable. I am not certain I want to watch it again, but I will if we want to do it on the show. We still should probably do Bride of Chucky at some point as well.
You guys have been saying that for years.
I know.
Because I've been hesitant. Because I've seen that thing, and it's just like I just know how it's going to end.
Oh well, it's going to be a good time for everybody. But Scott, anything more? Gene, Scott?
I just have to thank Scott for having us watch Stop Motion the other time because
wow, I really like that one.
I love that movie. I keep thinking about it. I might buy that movie. Yeah,
I did watch some of that again recently because after we had talked about it, and some of that's a movie definitely bears certain things about it bears study, despite my initial reaction of disgust from certain parts of it.
Well, and I think because Stop Motion, that was playing at the theater, we saw it. I usually like to watch these movies twice before we talk about them, and we didn't have the opportunity to do that. And so, we missed a lot of stuff, for sure, in that one.
Yeah.
Even though it's good, we all recommended it.
Yeah, that movie's awesome.
But anyway, I don't think we have anything more to talk about this Saturday morning.
No.
Okay, something will happen next week. I have no idea what it'll be, but that's the way we roll around here. So, Scott,
Roger really likes that Tin Star.
Tin and Tina.
Tin and Tina.
Tin and Tina. It's these
alliteration.
It's these two creepy little kids that have been raised in a convent, and they get adopted by this couple. It's insane.
What a great premise! Oh my Lord.
Yeah, check it out, and if you want to do it next week, we can definitely do that. Although I don't know if I want to sit through the thing again, but it's great in my opinion.
And it's streaming now?
Yeah.
Netflix?
So there was
or is it Prime?
Disappear completely on Netflix, and then right underneath it, it's like, oh, what's this weird movie with these creepy little
well, that's on
kids?
your algorithm. My algorithm probably has rom-coms. And, animated.
And so then I clicked on it, and it's like, oh man, it's 2 hours. Can I really do anything with this? It's 2 hours. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll just check 15, 20 minutes. It'll tell me right away if it's going to suck. And I'm like, okay, I'm all in here. And I keep waiting for okay, maybe I'll just stop at the hour mark and watch it again later. Oh no, I'm all in. I'm watching to the end here because this is just insane.
Nice.
Yeah, Gene, I really would look forward to hearing what you're going to say about it. But
do you want to join us?
Scott, I would highly recommend you watch this film because there is stuff going on in here that is just unbelievable.
Messed up. Yeah, I was telling my wife this morning as I'm tweaking a screenplay right now, and I told her, I said, this is getting more and more gonzo the more I write it. But I'm okay with that.
Well, if it's more and more gonzo, you know who you have to call, Nicolas Cage.
I don't think I can afford him.
Oh, who knows?
Exactly, yeah. But I don't know. I started a screenplay, and I was talking with Roger, and you were like all negative on it. I was like really surprised. You're like, you can't do outdoors hard to shoot, and you can't really do like
he's
chase
correct.
scenes.
See, the director is here.
You know, where you're holding the camera and you're running, and you're like, oh, you'll make the audience members sick. And I was like, what are you talking about?
You can use a gimbal.
Awesome.
You can use a gimbal. That'll smooth it out.
Well, but he wanted to be out in the deep woods somewhere, and I was just
man.
like, oh my God, dude.
Did he just bring generators?
Just bring generators.
All right, we've got to get out of here and continue this
yeah,
conversation off mic. But thanks for tuning in, Scott. It's always great to have you on. Hopefully we can have you on again next week with Tin and Tina, which we are locked in to do next week.
Yeah.
We'll catch you then. Bye-bye.